Kia ora and welcome. My name is Ellen Rose and this is the Creative Cure to Boredom. I've created this channel to share and explore some interesting approaches to art using everyday materials you can find in your own home. The hope is that it makes the current lockdown and isolation situation just a little bit more bearable. Today we're going to have a bit of an explore with turning eggshells to pastels. I have my trusty little sidekick here with me, Bryce, and we hope that you enjoy the video. Cheers! So we have eggshells that have been cleaned and dried, flour and boiling water.
We used a blender to grind up all the eggshells.
So it doesn't matter how much you use, but it does matter that you use equal components of eggshell to flour. We then want to add enough hot water to turn it into a really thick paste. And it is important to use hot water. I've tried cold water and unfortunately it doesn't glue together in the same way.
Why do we put them into different cups?
Because we're doing 3 different ones. I was trying to make a normal purple the first time, but it went really dark. And the second time, it was much better.
And what one did I want to make?
Green.
Yeah.
So we're using food colouring, but you can use normal craft dyes if you want to. And it's really important that we mix it together really well, so there's no white clumps left.
I didn't really want to touch it because it was really gooey. And I didn't really want to get my hands.
Goopified.
Yes.
It's really wet as well, so we want to make sure that we put some flour down onto that paper towel to make sure that it doesn't stick to it too much.
We're rolling the chalk flour into kitchen roll.
Then we just roll them up and take them up, and we're going to leave them to dry out in the sun for a couple of days. I made a batch before this. I actually ended up putting it into the oven on really low on 120 to just make sure that it was extra hard.
We've started our first pictures. We're using sandpaper to draw on instead of just normal paper.
We decided to go with sandpaper because it's a lot more like pavement, and so you'll be able to get that real chalky mark on it because it has more of a grit to its surface than just smooth paper. And we've used just some masking tape to tape down the paper so that it doesn't wiggle about when we're drawing.
It was really hard to draw on the white sandpaper more than the black sandpaper.
So the white sandpaper was certainly a lot more challenging to draw on. I think mostly because it was white and our chalks were coming out a lot lighter than we'd expected. So it was harder to see what lines we'd already made. It was also a lot thicker grit, and so that was possibly a little bit harder on our hands and on the chalk pastel that we'd made. I'd certainly recommend using the darker sandpaper if you want to use some sandpaper.
Wow.
Here are our final results. I think you can easily see that the chalk pastels or just chalk turned out a lot better on the darker sandpaper than the lighter sandpaper. it was not as hard of a grit as the white sandpaper, and so consequently it wasn't as hard to get the marks down, but also the marks themselves are a lot lighter than we expected, so it worked better on a darker surface. So it was 120 grit for the dark sandpaper and 80 grit for the white sandpaper. Now you can still see the marks on the white sandpaper, but it's certainly not as strong. And as I say, it was a lot harder to get those marks down. So I've been playing with this recipe for a little while and I still haven't gotten it quite right. I think part of the issue is that the eggshell needs to be ground up a bit more. So in our chalk, there's still little bits of chunks of eggshell that you can see. And I think that's creating the intensity of the white in our actual chalk. So the colour pigment that we put in isn't coming through quite as strong as we would have liked. It was still a really interesting activity to try. So I'd be really interested to hear what you've done, if you've tried a similar sort of process. So please remember to leave your comments and suggestions below. We hope you've enjoyed this video. My name's Ellen Rose. This has been the Creative Cure to Boredom. My little helper has been Bryce. Until next time, ngā mihi nui.